Well, it is showtime. Finally finished my bagel bites and I'm ready to go. I'm excited about this live show. Well, you know what? I'm excited about every live show, but I'm very interested in what we're about to talk about. It's some big time news, but before we go, forgot my volume was up. Sorry about that. But before we go any further, please hit the like button. Even if you don't like me or you don't like the video, it helps the video hit the YouTube algorithm, gives us suggestions more, and more people see it, click on it, and boom, we grow the audience. So you're not just helping me, you're actually helping you because it helps grow the audience, and it's more people that you can talk smack to. That's what the like button does, and that's why it's very important for live shows. Even when we're not live anymore, it helps us get views. And if you have a question or a comment or a troll, you want to make fun of me, you think I'm full of it, hey, I'm cool with that. We're not always going to agree on everything. You want to get my attention? Super chat's the way to do that. It's the little dollar sign that you see on the bottom right-hand corner. Anything that you put in that super chat, I will throw on the screen, even if you're making fun of me, because we appreciate you supporting the channel so much. Doesn't matter. You can make fun of me all you want. It helps keep the channel going. How's everybody doing this evening? This is very interesting news right here. And like I said in the pre-recorded video that I put out earlier today, I've been talking about conference realignment for over a year now, ever since Texas and Oklahoma announced that they were going to the SEC, and mine mostly centered around the ACC. There were other conferences that I talked about, but the ACC, I was very intrigued because West Virginia, most of their rivals were in the ACC. Well, I had a strong inside source. The biggest and strongest source was actually, is actually part of Clemson. I'm not going to say, what area or whatever, but it was a very reliable source. And what they were telling me is that it was going to be West Virginia and Notre Dame, and it was going to be relatively fast. Of course, that didn't happen. Month went by, 3 months went by, 6 months, a year, nothing has happened. And it looks like that Notre Dame wants to stay independent, and the grant of rights is keeping teams from leaving the ACC. I mean, they could still bring in West Virginia, but they would have to sign those grant of rights. And just a bunch of off-the-wall stuff happening. And then this past summer, we have UCLA and USC. They decided they want to join the Big Ten. Can't blame them. And then, other rumors of Oregon and Washington wanting to go to the Big Ten. Big Ten says no, or maybe later, smaller revenue shares, stuff like that. So it's always interesting to get new information to try to figure out what's going to happen next, because that's what everybody's wondering. What's going to happen next? Because it's not these little movements of, like, it's not, for example, it's not like, oh, Georgia Tech and Duke have announced they're headed to the Big Ten. I mean, yeah, that would be newsworthy, but they're not like massive brands when it comes to football. We're talking about Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC, and UCLA and USC going to the Big Ten. That's ground shattering right there. That changes a lot of things. So a lot of people want to know, well, is my conference safe now? Pac-12, you're a Pac-12 fan, right? Well, let's say you're an Oregon State fan, right? Oh, man, UCLA and USC are going to the Big Ten, and I'm hearing that Washington and Oregon want to leave for the Big Ten. Are we okay? Same thing with the ACC whenever we were talking about Clemson, Florida State, Virginia, and North Carolina wanting to head to the SEC. Well, if you're I don't know, for instance, a Louisville fan, well, are we okay? Do we need to be looking somewhere else? So the reason most of us want to know what's going to happen next is we want to know what our team needs to do. Do we need to be looking somewhere else? Are there other options? Are we on a sinking ship? Is this conference going to be okay? How bad is the situation? A bunch of questions. And that's why conference realignment is it's a very interesting topic. It's a lot of, some of it's guessing, some of it's, taking what you hear and trying to figure out, all right, which one of these avenues makes the most sense. And I've made a lot of conference realignment videos. Y'all know that. I know that. And it's just trying to figure out what the next thing's going to happen. Well, this week, and it's big news, it's not just me. Other YouTube channels, I saw Kuz's Corner earlier today. He did one on this. It's on, ESPN has talked about it. The Observer, a lot of big news outlets have been talking about the ACC having talks. Jim Phillips, the ACC commissioner, talking with the chancellor of North Carolina about what to do with the ACC, because make no mistake about it, they are not happy with how the branding of the ACC looks right now. They're not happy. In fact, they understand why Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, and Virginia want to leave. They understand. And so what they're doing is, well, first off, Jim Phillips, he's actually going from university to university, every university in the ACC, and he's looking at their books. Yes, he's looking at their books. He's taking tours of their football facilities. And I don't know what the standard that's in his head is, but it seems to me there's a certain standard that he wants all the schools to meet. So he's going school to school to school to see if each one of those schools meet the standard. I don't know if he's going to give them a deadline or whatever, but the plan is, if it's as bad as he thinks it is, and it probably is. I mean, look at some of the teams in the ACC. It's mostly not very good brands. You have the brands way up here, a few middle ones, and then a lot on the bottom. It's an off-balance conference. So the next plan that he talked with the UNC chancellor is not merging, not just adding teams, but literally, and this falls into what we heard over the summer, getting 8 teams to vote to dissolve. Jim Phillips wants to dissolve the ACC as it is right now and then rebuild it from the ground up. Because if you dissolve the ACC as is, then there goes those grant of rights, and those lower brands are free to go wherever they want to go. And if the ACC can get bigger brands from the Pac-12 or the Big 12, they can renegotiate a really good TV deal and not have those lower brands, making money that they're not necessarily earning. And the big brands aren't earning the money that they do deserve. So his thinking, his rationale, it does make sense. My only question is it actually doable? Well, it is doable, but how probable is it? Because I don't know how that coincides with antitrust laws. You got to worry about those. Maybe if you dissolve the conference, then that doesn't apply because the conference no longer exists and you're creating a new conference. I don't know. There's a lot of questions and there's a lot of things that need to be figured out. Where did that? Oh, there's the arrow. Can't find the arrow on the screen. Thank you, Vanity Rose, for the $5 donation. How do you call it the new Big 12 when your list only has 2 teams that's ever played? I see 7 Pac schools. Might want to call it the new Pac. Well, it's the new Big 12 because it seems like they're going to try to attract the Pac-12 teams out of the Pac-12 instead of the other way around. So if it is the other way around, then yes, it would remain the Pac-12. Just from my understanding, it's going to be, all right, you go get teams from the Pac-12. We'll get the biggest brands, you get the other brands, and then we'll get your biggest brands, and you'll get our lowest brands. So it's a lot of flip-flopping, almost like the ACC and the Big 12 working together, saying, hey, do you want to survive? I know I want to. Now, the deal is we're going to get the better brands, okay? But you'll survive if we do this plan. That's what it comes down to. If this is, I don't know if the ACC and the Big 12 are talking about this. We've heard that the ACC has talked to the Pac-12 about a straight-up merge, but decided to back out of that. We heard that the ACC talked to the Big 12 about a possible merge, and that didn't happen. Well, this is a whole separate thing. This isn't a merge between the ACC and the Big 12. This is almost like a collusion between the two to say, all right, so you get – it's almost like picking dodgeball, They're starting with no teams, and, we get the good ones. You get the not-so-good ones, but we get rid of competition. You still exist, and you're going to make about the same, maybe a little bit better money. I don't know. But it's about survival. How bad do these conferences want to survive? Are they willing to do something like that? I don't know. But the ACC, they're in offensive mode right now. That from the conversations that were posted in these news outlets on other sports YouTube channels, from what I've seen, the ACC is looking to be on the offensive right now, which is the right decision, because if you look at what's happened to the Big 12 and now the Pac-12 later on, if you don't do something, then usually something happens to you. And then over the summer, of course, we heard Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia, and Florida State say, yeah, we want to head to the SEC. Well, panic button time. Yep. ACC pushed the panic button, and it's looking like they actually want to do something now. I don't know if it actually happens, but hey, at least they're showing that, they have some fight in them, not just like, well, we have them locked in until 2036. Maybe we can figure out something by then, but for now, we're good for a decade. It looks like they're trying to think past that, which they could do that if they wanted to. They could. All right, so what I'm going to do now is, hold on, guys. Let's see. Now I'm going to, and I always forget to put the StreamYard in. Now I did it on purpose this time because I wanted to set the stage. The only thing I hate about these sunglasses, I can't I don't have a good feel for the. All right, where's the all right. Mm-hmm. And that should be the right keystrokes. Let me double check. All right, so I'm going to put the StreamYard link right there. You want to join? That's the way to join. If you don't want to be seen on camera, that's fine. Just make sure to show me your face before I put you on. Make sure you're not some type of weirdo or anything like that. And yeah, hitting the like button, that helps a lot. It helps the video gain viewers, and that's more people for you to smack talk in the comments section. So it actually helps yourself as well. But so as far as teams going where, who knows? The video that I did today was what made the most sense to me. It doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. It doesn't mean that's what I've heard. It's from what I'm hearing, what they want. That's what made the most sense to me. So the teams that seem safe in the ACC, they're not going. They're living up to the standard whenever it comes to football. Their facilities, they have the fan support. They're making the money for the ACC. I would say for sure Clemson, Florida State, NC State, Louisville, Virginia Tech, and North Carolina. Those teams for sure. And then the next level, probably, but not 100% certain, probably Virginia, Miami, let's see here, and Pitt. Yeah, Pitt. A little more shaky about Pitt, but because of this plan that they want to do as far as bringing teams from the Big 12, I think they would want to keep Pitt because that's a big rivalry with West Virginia, the backyard brawl, and the ACC would want to own that. That's why I think Pitt would be safe. Vanity Rose, thank you for the $5 donation. But who's going to pull the Pac teams when all of the Big 12 is gone? If those Pac teams say no, Kansas and TCU have nowhere to go. Well, you're still thinking the opposite. The Big 12 will be drawing out of the Pac-12 because they would be working with the ACC. So even though a lot of teams from the Big 12 go to the ACC, they're actually working together to pick apart the Pac-12. That's why I'm saying new ACC and new Big 12, because a lot of teams are in different spots. They're not just adding from the Pac-12. They're actually swapping teams themselves. So Big 12 drawing teams out of the Pac-12. ACC gets the best brands, which is like, I think I counted 3 or 4 that made the cut. So speaking of which, the Pac-12 teams that I think would make the cut for the ACC would be Washington, Oregon, and Utah. I think that's it. Yeah, Washington, Oregon, and Utah. I think the rest would go to, quote, the new Big 12. Now, I do understand what you're saying, Vanity Rose, because I have the new ACC trying to go after West Virginia, Baylor, Oklahoma State, even UCF, which is a new one, Texas Tech, Iowa State, Kansas State, and BYU. That's 8 of the, well, not current members because the 4 new ones are about to be, but the 8 of the future members of the 12. So, yes, there will be 4 remaining, but the ACC will be swapping their teams over to the Big 12, and then they'll be splitting the Pac-12. So the new Big 12 would be getting Cal, Oregon State, Washington State, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Stanford. So that's 7. Yeah, that's 7. And then the new ACC gets the top 3, Washington, Oregon, and Utah. Now, I do think that the new Big 12 would try to get to 20, just like the new ACC. Well, with this format, they only have 16. So they could go out and get San Diego State, Fresno State, Boise State, and Memphis. Those would be the top 4 brands as far as group of 5 teams that would actually make them money. That would make sense. Because remember, now for both of these conferences, we're talking coast to coast, basically. Just different brands, the lower brands in the new Big 12, and then the upper brands in the new ACC. But both of these would be coast to coast because the new ACC would have Clemson, Florida State, NC State, Louisville, Virginia Tech, North Carolina, Virginia, Miami, West Virginia, Baylor, Oklahoma State, UCF, Washington, Oregon, Utah, Texas Tech, Iowa State, Kansas State, BYU, and Pitt. So that's coast to coast. New Big 12, Kansas, TCU, Cincinnati, Houston, Cal, Washington State, Oregon State, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Stanford, Syracuse. So you're also on the east side as well. Wake Forest, Boston College, Duke, Georgia Tech, and then the 4 group of 5. San Diego State, Fresno State, Boise State, Memphis. And the good thing for this, for the new Big 12, is this would be an amazing basketball conference. So even though they would be taking a little bit of a hit on the football side, they would, I mean, this would most definitely be the strongest basketball. And I know that's not what this is about, but you know, it's not like we're just getting lower brands, we'll suck it up. And well, they're actually getting the best brands in basketball, so it's kind of a give and take. I don't know if the Big 12 would go for this. I don't know. All I'm saying is this makes the most sense as far as what I heard from the conversations. Basically, the ACC saying, all right, we're dissolving. I don't know if they can dissolve on their own or if they would actually have to get 8 teams to vote to dissolve. Whatever the method, dissolving, and then basically rebuild the ACC from former members of the old ACC, members from the Big 12, and members from the Pac-12, the best brands. And then the Big 12 would reload with whatever teams are left out of the old ACC and whatever teams are out of the Pac-12. So I get what you're saying, Vanity Rose, as far as the name goes, but it's basically getting members out of the Pac-12. That's why the name would be Big 12, even though there's only going to be 4 remaining members, if this were to happen. I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves. This has not happened. It might not ever happen. I don't know. But, you know, the ACC is going to try. That's one thing we know for sure as of today. The ACC is going to try this. They're going to make an attempt. I don't know if they're going to succeed. I don't know if they're going to fall flat on their face. I don't know. But they're going to try. They're basically sick and tired of the brand of the ACC taking a nosedive. And I think we can all agree with that. Clemson's basically carried the ACC over the past decade. Jim Phillips is not happy with that. And I'm sure he knows that Clemson isn't happy, bearing the load and everybody else getting paid. See, this is what I love about this, because when you look at a conference, and so they get a TV deal, right? And the money's distributed equally. So the best teams get the same amount as the worst teams, and vice versa. The worst teams get the same amount as the best teams. That's got to be annoying, especially if you're the brand that is carrying this league year after year after year. And the one year you have a down year, guess what? The ACC doesn't make the playoffs. So it literally proves that Clemson has been carrying the ACC for the past 7 to 8 years. And they're not happy. Jim Phillips is sympathizing with them, and he's trying to figure out a plan to keep the big brands, get rid of the small brands, and bring in some big brands from the Pac-12 and the Big 12. Vanity Rose, thank you for the $5 donation. I get what you're trying to say, but the Big 12 leftovers isn't Texas and Oklahoma. Kansas and TCU don't have juice to punk all those teams. It's the new pack. We're just going to have to agree to disagree with on that one. TND, I'm bringing you in, buddy. Let me wait.
Yeah, what's up, man? First of all, I'm going to have to say no to everything you just said regarding this merger.
It's not
I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's just I think it's just an attempt by the ACC to build up hype that isn't there for the conference. Because Clemson's having a down year, Pitt is meh, Miami is overrated, and overall the ACC is not looking good.
So if they were trying to do that, what would that accomplish?
I don't think it would accomplish much. It's just an attempt for them to save face and get up there with the SEC and the Big Ten, which isn't going to happen.
Right.
Like even the Big 12 is doing better. Like, why would they bring the ACC in with them? Maybe for basketball purposes, maybe markets, but that's pretty much it.
I don't know. You're right. It doesn't make all that much sense.
Yeah.
But
the
I
only
do know that the
scenario
ACC
where it
does
would make
want to do
sense
something
is if
about
the
this. I don't know if they
ACC
can or not, but they want to. I don't know if they will, but they want to based on these conversations.
Yeah, the only way I can see this happening is if the ACC brings in UCF, which has their massive student body. But then again, that's 3 Florida schools. I don't see it happening.
So the one of the main reasons why Jim Phillips wants to dissolve instead of just adding is he doesn't like the fact that the ACC has a bunch of lower brands. See, that's why he says he's going around and, touring all the campuses and looking at the books to see if they're actually, investing into football. This is about football. He made no mistake about that, left nothing to chance or guesses. This is about football. So he's saying that he's going around visiting all the football facilities, looking at the books to see how much money they're spending, how much money, are they keeping true to their word as far as investing in football. And if they're not, nicest way to say it, I guess, is he wants to get rid of those teams. But you can't do that.
So basically what he's doing is he's trying to pull the Pac-12 route and dissolve the conference and build it back up.
Right.
What they're going to call it? The Atlantic 12?
Well, the name that was proposed is the APAC, the Atlantic Pac. Or the Atlantic Pacific, the APAC. That was the name that was proposed. So you hit the nail right on the head right there. A lot of people don't realize that the Pac-12 did that. What was it called before that? The West Coast Conference or the Big West? What was it called before the Pac-12?
I think it was just the Pacific Coast Conference.
Yes, there you go. The Pacific Coast Conference. So I'm glad you said that because a lot of people don't know that. The Pac-12 really did they did that. They were the Pacific Coast Conference. They dissolved it. And they basically just invited the members they wanted from the old bunch back and added some new members. That's what the ACC wants to do. I don't know. See, here's the thing. I don't know if they'll succeed or not. That's a whole another situation.
There weren't as much legal gymnastics that these brands had to jump through just to get to that point. Back then, it was almost a free for all. Yep. But now with, all these media deals and these contracts, like I don't think it's feasible. I would like to see it and see what the teams that join this new conference build it up as, but I just don't see it happening right now. Maybe in a few years we can have honest,
it's very hard to believe that they would actually get this accomplished, but it's fun to at least talk about. And it's one thing to think up something or try to figure out a scenario, but when you actually have like a conversation to go by, wow, this guy really wants to do this, and there's an actual precedent on it with the Pac-12 back in the day, it can make for some interesting, conversations. Now, whether they succeed or they actually go through with it, that's a whole different conversation. So the video that I did today was based on, if they got what they wanted, these are the teams that I think they would get. That was the premise for today's video. So it was basically, the ACC wants all the big brands. They're sick of all these smaller brands, getting paid. Clemson,
right, so they're doing what the Pacific did,
and they want the biggest brands now.
Because the Pacific Coast dumped Idaho, and they kept the major
and Montana,
brands.
I think. And Montana, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ACC could do the exact same thing. They could dump Boston College or, one of those smaller brand schools.
Yeah.
And, they would have the leeway to add someone who might have a decent brand that isn't, affiliated with the bigger conferences like the Big X or the SEC.
I think that's one team that they're regretting grabbing from the Big East, Boston College over West Virginia. Miami, not so much. They're a good brand. They make a lot of money. Virginia Tech, same thing there. Pitt, I don't know. Louisville, debatable. Boston College, that's the one regret that they have because they thought getting Boston College meant that they were going to get the Boston market, and nobody in Massachusetts except for a few hundred, maybe a few thousand, couple thousand people care about Boston College football on a year in and year out basis. That is a pro sports state, a pro sports city. They like the Patriots, the Bruins, and the Red Sox. That's it. They do not care about Boston College. But the ACC, I don't know. How did the ACC not know that? That's what baffled. Like, everybody knows that.
I thought it was common knowledge that the further north you go, I think Virginia is I think Virginia or Pennsylvania is the cutoff one. The further north you go, the less they care about football. Because it gets too cold up there that time of year.
And that's on the eastern side. Like on the west side, you got Michigan and Minnesota and all that stuff. But
but
on the west coast, Washington, Oregon. But northeast, anything above Pennsylvania, I know Syracuse from time to time, but that's like one team. Anything above Pennsylvania, it's basically sports.
Now,
even Syracuse fans for football, they'll take Buffalo success over Syracuse success. I will say that.
I don't know about Buffalo. Buffalo is not
when it comes to football. When it comes to football, not basketball.
I still wouldn't take them in football. I'd have to see Buffalo and Syracuse go head-to-head before I make that decision.
Thank you, Sorty Stories. I forgot to mention the Boston Celtics for
yes, the Celtics.
So yeah, they love their pro sports team. They really could care less about Boston College, and
it's like the inverse of the South. We love college, but we hate professional sports.
Well, and it's because we don't have those massive cities. City of Boston has 4 professional teams. State of South Carolina has a half. We split one with North Carolina. Georgia has Atlanta.
Yeah.
But most of Georgia would rather have the Georgia Bulldogs have success.
Alabama doesn't have one.
Yeah. Cindy Machado.
Huntsville's trying to get a AAA baseball team in. That's not much.
I'm getting a lot of questions for San Diego State. Cindy Machado, thank you for the donation, says, will San Diego State be considered for the merged conference? If this did happen, yes, I think San Diego State would be a filler. Fresno State, Boise State, and Memphis. I think those 4 would be your filler schools for the new Big 12. They're definitely next up on because the one thing that I like about San Diego State is they proved that they actually do care about football. They built a brand new stadium for San Diego State. They're showing that they're invested in football. I know they're having a down year from what they did last year, but that's gonna help sustain getting recruits as far as the best possible recruits that you can get out of the Mountain West. The next step is for San Diego State to go to a Power 5 conference. Mm-hmm. Then, you can get even better recruits. But I like what I'm seeing at San Diego State, and I do think that they would be on the next wave as far as bringing a group of 5 teams up to Power 5 status.
Yeah, and I will say one name that is suffering this year in terms of its, potential competitiveness for the Power 5 is Boise State. They're doing absolutely terrible this year. I mean, it looks like a completely different team than what I've seen in recent years.
Yeah.
And I remember the Kellen Mond era or the Kellen Moore era.
Well, another thing that hurt them a lot was UCLA and USC going to the Big Ten directly affected Boise State because they were on the top of the list with Memphis as far as potential new members to the Big 12. Well, ever since that happened, the Big 12 is now looking at the Pac-12, and Boise State and Memphis went to the bottom.
Yep.
So that directly
affected. And that was just a case of, they wanted to match the hype, but they just couldn't do it. I really feel for Boise State and Memphis. I don't know how well Memphis is doing this year, but it's not looking good for either team if they want to make the Power 5.
Well, I don't feel bad for the program itself because they've made bad decisions, but I do feel bad for the fan base because Boise State, same thing goes for Memphis. Why did they wait so long to announce that they were going to invest in their football program? It was prime time to get picked up by a Power 5 conference the entire past decade. They wait till this year when a lot of conference realignment has already happened to announce that they're going to, invest in their football stadium. With Boise State, they're only adding like 4,000. Now with Memphis, they have like a $200 million project to renovate the Liberty Bowl. So it's going to look really, really good. So Memphis, as far as their stadium goes, they're going to be really attractive. But Boise State, they haven't made timely decisions. They haven't made timely decisions. You have to decide. Be decisive.
I think the argument would be complacency because no one thought Texas and Oklahoma would make the move to the SEC. I wouldn't say so early, but when they announced that move, that's when everything kicked off. Nobody really saw it coming, and it was just a reaction, if anything. So because the Big 12 started picking up the AAC schools, and by that time it was too late for Memphis, and then the domino effect kicked in. And I should know JSU benefited from that domino effect very well.
Oh yes, you did. And upsetting Florida State last year, that helped too.
Oh, that did help.
That was awesome. That was freaking amazing. That was a great win for you guys. And the way it ended, as far as how y'all got the win, that was like, it's just one of those. It's like when Appalachian State with that Hail Mary against Troy. Those are things. That's why we love college football. It's more possible in college football than it is pro because in pro you have all the best of the best.
It does my
so the
heart good
likelihood
to
of
teach
that happening, it's not very high at all. Where in college you have people at safety or cornerback or whatever that haven't been playing as long as maybe some of these other guys, and they have more of a chance of having a blown coverage or something.
Absolutely. And one program I think that's been completely overlooked until about this past weekend was James Madison. They come in year one in the Sun Belt. They destroy Middle Tennessee, who just recently beat Miami. They beat Appalachian State, who beat Texas A&M. James Madison had the highest budget coming into the Sun Belt, the highest athletic budget. They're destroying their competition, and there's no one that can stop them. I've been saying for months that they were going to be unstoppable.
I can also say that I didn't know they had the highest budget. That's incredible.
Oh, yeah. It was D1 360 on YouTube. He did a whole analysis of the teams that moved up to the Sun Belt. That's how I figured it out. James Madison had the highest athletic budget.
I got you.
So they come in, they're wrecking shop, and I've been saying for months that James Madison is a sleeping giant.
Yeah.
I'd say they're top 3, if not top 2, in Virginia right now.
Yes, definitely, especially with how bad Virginia Tech. My gosh, they're way worse than what I knew they were bad, but they are way worse than what I thought they were.
Hi, fellas. How are you today?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Oh, great, man. Another crazy day of rumors and different scenarios.
Hey, GBD, I have a question for you. And who are you talking to right now?
TND.
Oh, I'm TND.
TMD. This is an honest question for you guys. Taking away geographically, what conference do you guys think realistically Utah fits better in? The Big 12 or the Big 10?
Big 12.
Big 12.
Big 12 for sure, without a doubt.
You don't think?
Because remember, BYU's in there.
You don't think what is a term people always use when it comes to fitting in? It's not geographics. It's like
culture fit.
Yeah, culture fit. You don't. You don't think culture fit. They fit well with following Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten after UCLA and USC go?
Well, I don't necessarily think that they wouldn't fit. I just think they would fit better in the Big 12.
I think Washington is a perfect fit for the Big Ten because they are a top research institution, and they're finally rebounding in football again. Oregon, I'm gonna need to see more from them.
How about Oregon to the ACC? culturally? Do you think they would do well in the ACC, like culturally, or are they more a Big 12 school or a Big 10 school?
That's a good question because of what's come up today. Oregon is one of the teams that the ACC would try to go after if they were to try to do this dissolve and rebuild. So that's a good question. And if you actually think about it, to some degree, yes. If I'm comparing between them, honestly, and this sounds weird, if I'm comparing, not thinking about geography, okay? We're not thinking about geography. If I'm comparing Big 12, ACC, and which one Oregon fits in better, I actually think that they would fit in the ACC better. And I'm trying to put my finger on why I think that way, and I can't come up with the actual answer. I just have this. I don't know. It just seems that way.
Phil Knight.
I'm like at a broken mix between the Big Ten and the ACC.
Oh, and I think this is why. Let's not forget the majority of the team at Nike are Nike people, Nike uniforms.
North Carolina, Jordan.
Yeah,
which is not the same, but it's close.
Yeah, no, I'm saying like in general, the majority of those teams. Except for Miami. Miami's Adidas, but Miami would be willing to switch over to Nike.
Well, here's the thing, Tony. If you're putting the Big Ten in the mix, then I would say both Washington and Oregon fit in the Big Ten the most. I think they're off the table, though, at least for now. So if it comes down to the Big 12 or ACC, I would say Washington, Oregon. Not thinking about geography, okay? If that's not part of the equation, I think that they would fit in the ACC more than the Big 12.
I rewatched your video. Why did you not put Stanford in the ACC?
Because they're football brand. This is strictly about who they would get over
because don't forget
they're football brand.
Notre Dame, Stanford.
I was not factoring in Notre Dame or anything other than football. And so I was going down the list and figuring out which teams had the better football brand. And Stanford was close to making the cut, but there was a few other teams that had a better football brand than Stanford. Like I would say it probably came down to not thinking about Notre Dame, right? It came down to probably between an Iowa State and a Texas Tech. And then on the other side, maybe an Arizona and a Stanford, or a Colorado and a Stanford. So it was, once you get towards the middle, it got tight. But I still, you still got to make a choice. And I put Stanford.
But for me, I think football wise, I think they have a better track record than Texas Tech does. What do you mean?
No, I'm talking about making money.
Notre Dame. What do you don't think
Texas Tech has better facilities? They have a bigger fan base, and so I think Texas Tech would make more money. Not factoring in Notre Dame. Okay, we're just going by football brand, bigger fan base. Their football facilities are better. I just think that they would make more money for the ACC than Stanford would. I think ACC fans themselves would care more about Texas Tech playing their teams over Stanford as well. You could factor that in.
No,
too much of an academic brand. That
hey,
I think
GD, can I make a couple points on all this?
Yeah,
I'll go ahead.
Can I make a couple points on all this?
Sure.
Here's a couple things that you need to take in consideration. The last time a conference disbanded and got back together, that was the Pac-12. That was back in the 50s. Now, once a conference disbands, they will totally lose the Autonomy 5. So they're not going to be a Power 5 no more. That goes away.
Jeff, don't forget.
No, it's because they're not a conference. Yeah, I agree.
Don't forget the Southwest Conference, the Big 12.
But no.
And the WAC.
And when the Southwest Conference dissolved, they lost power. But now listen, this is what's going to happen. If the ACC were to dissolve and they're going to make this big conference, right?
Right.
That means that they dissolved it on their own. So the antitrust, the Sherman Act, is now out the door.
Right.
So once that's out the door and you give this up, then And trust me, North Carolina will bail on this agreement. Clemson will bail. Florida State will bail. All these teams will bail and go to the Southeast Conference and to the Big Ten. And there's nothing that the conferences can do about it because they broke up the conferences, and that stops the Sherman Act. The Sherman Act is the only thing keeping those conferences together right now. It's an antitrust.
Yeah, the
and
Sherman
if they
Act.
decide to resolve that, what's that? But no, if they dissolve that, then they have no legal recourse. And then the Big Ten and the SEC is able to get as many national championship teams like Washington, like Clemson of the last 50 years into their conference. And there's nothing that those conferences could do about it.
So wait, do you think Miami would end up going to the Big Ten then, Jeff?
Yes, Miami would go to the Big Ten in a hot minute.
Over the SEC?
Oh yeah. The thing you
Florida wouldn't let them into the SEC.
Miami is a private college. The only private college that the SEC has is Vandy. We won't have another one. The Big Ten needs Miami. They need the recruiting. It's going to give them TV revenue because of the market size.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys were talking earlier that nobody understood why Boston College was let into the ACC. It was all about money. They made more money than most of the other teams coming into the ACC because ESPN was looking at the market. They don't care who watches. They just knew that the Boston market, they would be able to sell. Each one of their customers would bring in between 6 and 12 cents per customer, and that's why they did it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, no, Miami will go to the Big Ten.
But would the Big Ten throw their AAU requirement out the window so Miami would get in? Because Miami doesn't have AAU membership.
Yeah, they do.
They would not throw it out the door. But if you look, AA has announced that they are looking. Miami will have AAU within a year or two. That's already been decided.
Jeffrey, hold on, guys. Jeffrey Foster, thank you for the $9.99 donation. Said, was trying to send your West Virginia Country Roads mini helmet from this year. Hold on one second, buddy. Where's it at?
So,
there's the
Something about
address.
Amazon.
Let me go back to the super chat real quick, and then I'll put the address back up. So he was trying to send the Country Roads mini helmet from the Backyard Brawl, but having issues with Amazon not accepting the address. Don't know what's going on with Amazon. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to put this back up for you, and you can double check to see if you have the correct address. And if you do, and it's on Amazon, that's a little bit ridiculous, actually. I don't know what's going on, but I've heard multiple people say stuff like that. So I don't know if the site has had some glitches or whatever, but yeah, they've had some issues as far as like your address, it cannot be shipped to this address, stuff like that. So just double check that and let me know, and we'll try to figure out something. I might have I have a secondary address. I just don't like to give it out to everybody because, that's not the smartest thing in the world to do, but I have it in case I need it. So what you were saying, Jeff, earlier about, if they disbanded and everybody would go to either SEC or the Big Ten, the only thing about that is, so from what I've heard, these teams do love being in the ACC, but they don't love the money that they're making. So if they were to come up with an agreement beforehand, like, okay, if we got all these teams, what would our TV deal look like? Maybe they could get like a rough draft or something like that. And if the money matched what these teams were wanting, that's how you would keep them. Now, if they couldn't come up with that money, then absolutely, it's a free-for-all. These teams can go wherever they want without no buyout, without no antitrust lawsuit. But see, in my opinion, if somebody is going to do this, then they have a plan in place. It's not like, all right, we're going to dissolve and hopefully nobody goes to the Big Ten and the SEC and they see that we're figuring this out. If they're actually talking about this, that makes me believe that they have some type of actual plan to somehow retain these teams and get these other teams from other conferences. Could I
but
be
the
wrong?
problem is,
Absolutely. But if he's a businessman and trying to make this move, then why would you take a chance and dissolve and hopefully they don't leave? Please don't let them leave. I don't think it would work like that.
But the problem is you're listening to North Carolina's president. Well, actually not their president. You're listening to the athletic director and the chancellor. And this has all been talked about previously. And it has never gotten to where the ACC has agreed to disband the PAC. The PAC already said they will not merge with the ACC. That is dead.
Same with Big 12.
And basically for the same reason. And you have to stop and think about this. The Big Ten's deal is not even started yet, and it's not done. They're going to bring in another group, and their number is going to go up. The SEC is going up. You cannot name me 20 teams. You cannot name me 12 teams or 14 teams or 16 teams in the remaining 3 conferences that if you put them together would even get you half of what the Big Ten money is or half of what the SEC is.
I disagree with that. I don't think they could get 100%, but I think they could approach 70% the number that they would want if you get the big brands.
Here's the thing about what you've been saying, Jeff. This is what I'm thinking. Because here's the thing about what you've been saying. You're saying like Miami to the Big Ten or whatever. I don't see that happening at all. Here's why. They didn't take Oregon and Washington. Oregon and Washington are worth a lot more money than Miami is. They are. And they didn't take Oregon and Washington.
Do you know why they didn't take Washington?
Why?
Because Washington is the one team in the Pac-12 currently that has a national championship in the last 25 to 30 years. And the Sherman Act gets triggered if 2 conferences have most of the national championships in that period of time. And by taking Washington out, that would take the Pac-12 without one, and that would trigger the Sherman Act. This is all about litigation right now. The Big Ten has not said that they're done. The Big Ten has actually said the opposite. The Big Ten says they're still open, and they're going to 20. They're
well, then why wouldn't they get Oregon and Utah?
Well, they can't get them right now because once they take them, then the antitrust, and then they got to go to court, and they don't want to go to court right now.
Oregon and Utah?
Oh, they could take Oregon and Utah, but the money's not there. They want Washington. Washington is who they want. They don't really even want Utah. Utah is not a prize to the Big Ten.
Well, but I think the argument is, money value. I think Oregon would be more than Miami.
No, because Miami's going to bring in the Miami market, and you got to think how much bigger the Miami market is than anything Oregon has.
I disagree with that. I think Oregon locks down their region, and Oregon has a more national brand than Miami. I think right now, if you go back 20 years, I would say Miami has a more national brand, but right now, I would say Oregon has the national brand.
I think that's what this is. The ACC is announcing this stuff and talking about this stuff because I think this is my thought. They're going to go after a few of the teams out there that have that do good in television ratings, that do good, that bring some money to the conference. So they're going to want Oregon. They're going to want Washington. They're going to want the bigger teams. The thing about it is they're just exploring it right now. I don't know that they're going to completely dissolve the ACC other than just trying to get a better TV deal. And to get that better TV deal, they could merge and take some teams from the Pac, maybe take a couple of teams from the Big 12 as well. They could take a West Virginia and Oklahoma State and Washington and Oregon. I could see that happening real easy, going over into the ACC, and all of a sudden the money goes up tremendously in the ACC.
Well,
that's
the reason
what I think they're
the reason they choose dissolve is
Joey,
the grant of rights. Nobody's going to sign those grant of rights right now. I think that's why they're exploring the dissolve avenue and see if they could work something out that way. Because if you dissolve, the grant of rights are invalid.
But then also keep in mind, Joey, if you take, even if you leave Washington alone and you take 4 other schools from the Pac-12, does the Pac-12 go away then?
Well, no.
Hold on.
They have the autonomy 5.
I want Jeff to repeat that one more time.
They'll always have autonomy 5.
Hold on, Joey. Jeff, repeat that one more time.
No, they'll always have autonomy 5, and I'm with you. But let's say in your art, when you were talking, Golden Blue Dude, let's say the Pac-12 takes Oregon, Utah, and any other 2 teams. I don't care who it is as long as it's not Washington, okay? So they take 4, and now the Pac-12 only has 6 teams.
Okay.
Now, if their revenue is so hurt, they can dissolve, and they've done this before in the 1950s. They can dissolve and start something new.
Yeah.
But because the ACC had cut them down, and this is probably what the Pac-12 would do, because keep in mind, the Pac-12 might not be good in football, but they are smart people. But by the ACC taking those 4 teams, they could say it's detrimental to our conference.
Tortious interference.
That would strike the antitrust also. So now the Pac-12 sues the ACC for taking away those teams, and now you're in court again. And see, that's where half of this problem is, and this is why I said before. I'm not saying.
Well, it wouldn't only just trigger the Antitrust Act; it would trigger a tortious interference lawsuit.
Well, let me ask you this: if you dissolve the ACC,
all that stuff is tried.
Listen, does it still apply if the ACC dissolves and they word it in a way to where those 4 teams are saying, "Hey, we want to go form a new conference"?
Well, then what the SEC and the Big Ten could do is say, okay, well, the ACC now dissolved, right? So now the ACC has taken away Miami, Florida State, and Clemson as national championship winners, right? So now we're going from 5 conferences with national champions back to 4. That would trigger a lawsuit too. Where are those schools going?
What? What I'm saying is, if the ACC does this route, I'm going back to your Pac-12 argument and the lawsuits, okay? So if the ACC dissolves and the 4 members, whoever they may be, say, hey, we're leaving the Pac-12 because we're going to go with these other teams to form a new conference with your Clemsons, with your Florida States, with your Miamis, with your North Carolinas, would those lawsuits still apply to that if those 4 teams – they're not claiming that they're joining, the ACC doesn't exist anymore. So it's not, the ACC isn't grabbing them. Those 4 teams are saying we're leaving to form a new conference with these other teams. Would those lawsuits still apply there?
Now that, I'll be honest with you, I'm not smart enough to tell you, but I will tell you just from what I know with the Sherman Act, by dissolving the ACC, you're taking away a conference that has championships, which is Clemson, Florida State, and Miami.
Right.
Now, I don't know if that time, I mean, obviously the antitrust is broken. Who can sue on that? I don't know, because it's not, I mean, they dissolved. It wasn't the Big Ten taking over what, they don't have. So I don't know if.
And if they choose, who would sue? I guess would be my question.
But my thing is, if they do dissolve and then they pick up the teams from the Pac-12, which dissolves the Pac-12, then the Pac-12 could sue them because they dissolved the Pac.
But that also goes back to my argument of the teams, if they claim we're leaving this conference to form, whenever the ACC dissolves, it means they're no more. Like you said, those championships are gone. The ACC doesn't exist. So that aspect is gone. Now these teams from these other conferences are saying we're going to leave and we're going to form. We're not joining another conference. We're forming another conference with these other. That's where I'm trying to figure out if the lawsuits would apply for that.
Right, and all I can tell you on
so
that.
Jeff, your argument is that
question.
So what would they call it?
Your argument is that if Oregon. If Oregon and Washington left the Pac and joined the ACC or joined a new conference, just say they joined a new conference, you're saying the Pac could sue. What I'm saying is I don't think they could, because here's why. The Oregon and Washington can say, we didn't leave the Pac-12. The Pac-12 left us because they let USC and UCLA bail out of here to the Big Ten and left us getting no money and nothing in the contract.
No.
We had to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So
it does go down.
There's a way to go around that and say, hey, we didn't leave the Pac-12; they left us.
But see, Joey, that's a separate lawsuit, and I'm not saying that argument is not valid, but where the validity is, the suit that I'm telling you is the Sherman Act, which is an antitrust, and that's done by the government. It's supposed to be triggered no matter what. I mean, but we all know how our government works. But yeah, I mean, I do believe Washington, Oregon, I think all the teams could have an argument that the Pac-12 left us when USC and UCLA left.
I would agree.
But
because their money did take a hit. Their new TV deal is not going to be anywhere close to what it was. That is a fact. Vanity Rose, thank you for the $5 donation, says, you've made a living pushing the importance of markets. True. And now you're cutting the number 6 market in the nation in Stanford and Cal. The recruiting alone is nuts. Yeah, but they don't have that market covered. So just because you're taking those teams and putting them in another conference doesn't mean you're eliminating that market, because it would be one thing if they owned that number 6 market, but they don't. I mean, they got their fans that, that support them or whatever, but they don't own that region. You know what? I would go out on a limb and say there's probably a bunch of people in that region that are Oregon fans, or USC fans, the bigger brands that are close by that are not across the nation. I understand what you're saying. I just don't think that Stanford and Cal pulls that region, 100%. Not even close.
I would also say, Jeff, that
but see, the problem with
about
marketing GBD is like
hold on, Jeff. Go ahead, TND.
I'll say, Jeff, you made a point about, say, if a team leaves, that they're taking national championships with them, like Washington. Well, you also have to account that there's more sports than football and, the main sports. So like, say Stanford leaves. Stanford takes away so many Olympic sport national championships from the Pac-12. Would that also not trigger the Sherman antitrust law?
I did not think about that. Is that just football championships that the Sherman Act covers?
Yes.
Yes, I think USC, UCLA,
Really?
Would they not trigger the Sherman Act?
No, because when they left, they still left Washington in the Pac-12, which didn't trigger it.
Okay. So the Sherman Act.
But even if Washington left, there's still programs in the Pac-12 or Pac-9 with national championships, just not in football.
Right, and that's all they're looking at is for football, because football is what's driving the money. If this was driven by basketball, then we wouldn't be talking football right now. We'd be talking Duke and Kansas owning the world, and they're the driving sport. And honestly, you'd probably see the SEC dissolve.
Well, maybe they are the driving sport.
Well, I don't think he meant like just one specific sport. I think he meant any national championship across the board. Any other national championship count.
Some program.
Well, if you go across the board, then the Pac-12 is God, because you got Stanford number 1, you got Cal, who's in the top 10, USC and UCLA are second and third. Stanford, UCLA, and USC are 1, 2, and 3 in national champions.
Yeah. Yep. UCLA used to be a dominating force in college basketball. I mean, how many years in a row did they win the national championship?
Wasn't it like
they almost won another one 2 years ago when they beat Alabama in the tournament.
Yeah,
I forget who they lost to.
So my question would be this, Jeff. So would you think that according to these articles, these conversations have been going on, okay? So that part we know is 100% true. Knowing that, I would think, and I just want to get your opinion on this, I would think that if somebody really was talking about that and thinking about that, that they know some other stuff that they're not revealing. In other words, they have a plan, because I just don't see somebody saying, well, I think we'll just dissolve and hopefully all these teams stay and we'll try to get those other teams and it's got to be better than what's going on now. We'll try that. To me, it seems like they have to know some other stuff. They have to have some other plans. They have to have some other agreements with other teams where, yeah, if you do that, we'll do this.
Well, it would just take a vote from the other conferences to change all these rules and laws and stuff. I mean, they just have to vote. And I mean, there wouldn't be no objection from anybody to go to 4 power conferences, I don't think. And
no.
I mean, so
but here's where your objection comes from, Joey, is if we drop down to 4 power conferences, who's going to be left out? And then keep this in mind. Now we go down to 4 power conferences. Do you think the SEC and the Big Ten are going to play fair and say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and keep the playoffs the way it is? That's not what the SEC wanted. The SEC didn't want the playoffs the way it is now. They gave it up so other people could be invited. So you kick out another league. Do you think the Big Ten and the SEC is going to say, okay, the top 6 conference champions if there's only 4 powers?
That last part I do kind of disagree with. I don't think they gave it up to let other people participate. I think they wanted the new to 4 and then to 12 or 16, whatever we get, because they want more SEC teams in. They want to make more money. That's the only part.
They just want more wins.
That's the only part of your argument that I would disagree with. Everything else I can understand. But as far as the playoffs expanding, it was for and I'm not picking on the SEC. Everybody does things for selfish reasons. They want to make the most money. So I would say that would be the reason why the SEC agreed to the playoffs or wanted it expanded, because they know that, I mean, look, right now Kentucky would make the expanded. So many SEC teams. So they know that they would be able to get more teams in and make more money. I think that's why the SEC, is okay with this.
Right. And I stated it wrong. The SEC allowed a non-power 5 into the playoffs to get the votes. It wasn't to get more teams. It was to get the not. Yeah. But now if there's only 4 powers, then the SEC is going to back out and say, you know what? There should only be 5 conference champions instead of 6, because now we only have, the 4
That
powers.
would have to be reworked. Yes. Yeah. That would have to be reworked. 100%. I agree with that. Yes.
And like I said, I think everything you're saying.
But they came up with the formula pretty quick.
The what?
They voted on this formula pretty quick. I mean, they didn't. It's not like they stayed in negotiations for weeks. It was in there and out of there in a day. And
yes.
So it would easily be changed.
And I see that's the one argument that people are putting out as far as all this conference realignment. Well, no, now it can't happen because of the playoffs expanding, and it's 6 conference champions. And if you whittled it down to 4, that means you'd have 2 group of 5s, and they would never allow that. Well, I understand the theory behind that, but the playoffs, that's an easy the biggest thing you got to deal with is the conference realignment, the antitrust laws, and the Sherman Acts and all that stuff. The playoffs, that can be changed with 1 vote, no problem. So I don't think the playoffs expanding and 6 automatic bids for conference champions, the top 6 conference champions, that's not, oh man, like the grant of rights for the ACC. Oh, it's ironclad, can't do anything. No. The playoffs, the criteria for the playoffs can most definitely be changed.
And I do believe schools like Washington and North Carolina, obviously, and I even think the Big Ten and the SEC are throwing money at attorneys to try to get this Sherman Act to get a way around it. Because the Big Ten and the SEC want ACC teams. Washington don't want to be left out on an island. The ACC don't want to keep the contract they're in until 2036. It does not benefit them at all. So, I mean, everybody's on agreement of breaking it. It's just what happens when it's broken, how it is, that's where the problem is.
You have to do it in the right order, basically. Hey, I got an off-topic question real quick. I just noticed myself do I look like a peacock, guys?
You need another pennant underneath that Montana one in order to be like.
Yeah, I need one more feather. But mostly, and that reminds me of the. Have you ever watched the movie The Other Guys, where he says, "Captain, I'm a peacock. You gotta let me fly." It's a great movie.
You know what I'm thinking?
I did that bit. We went to North Carolina. We went to the zoo up there, and there was just like a peacock roaming around. And I was like, man, I got to do that bit. And I yelled it as loud as I could. And people were like, because I don't care. I don't care to make myself look stupid. I like to have fun, and that was awesome. It was awesome.
I think you put Christmas
I got a
lights
question. Has anybody
around
heard
them,
if
and that'll make it
they're
shine.
canceling?
Huh?
Has anybody heard if they're going to cancel the Florida State game this week?
Yeah, they're going to move it for sure.
I
Yeah,
think they moved it. Yeah.
they're definitely
Isn't
not
it
playing in the
Sunday
middle of a
now?
hurricane. Joe, I think Joey's a little bit behind. So, Jeff, what were you going to say real quick?
Oh, I was just making fun of your peacock. I said you ought to put up some Christmas colored Christmas lights back there, and it'll really pop for you.
Oh, I agree.
Exciting news. Exciting news. I don't know why what you just said just reminded me, but on Saturday, so my dad's going to come over and we're going to start working those shelves. And the idea that I came up with is, so I'm going to cut some boards at an angle to where they stick out of the wall at an angle, but they're still going to be anchored to the wall, right?
And that's where you're going to put your helmets.
Right. And the bottom shelves are going to be the closest. Okay. And then I'm going to widen them out. So it's going to be like stadium seating for the helmets. They're going to be anchored to the wall. They're going to be angled out. And then, of course, anchored at the edge. I think it's going to look awesome. I'm going to put lights behind it. So I'm pretty excited. And my dad let me know today that he was going to come over on Saturday. So I'm pretty excited about that.
You know, you might save yourself some time and just find another wall or build a room, because as many helmets and stuff as you're getting, you're about 2 months away from needing something bigger.
Well, that will happen for sure. But as far as displaying the helmets, I don't want. See, I'm the type of person where I want to be different, but not too different to where it's silly. So there's a lot of YouTubers out there, Uncle Lou, Mark Rogers. They have their mini helmets. They have them displayed in different ways. So I try to think of a way to display them in a different way. And that was the thing that popped in my head. Not on the wall, because that's going to be for the other stuff that people send. That's for your pennants, for your posters, your signs, and all that stuff. So the only thing that I could think of is have an extension of the wall of the shelving, have it stadium, so you could see the top just as well as the bottom. And with an angle, you can see the front just as well as the back. So you don't have a straight board where you can only see the first one or the last one. They're angled and they're layered. So every helmet will be visible. That was the goal. Thank you, Sergeant Pickles 13 for the $4.99 donation. Says, hello all. I'm looking forward to my Huskies exposing the Bruins for the 4-0 Predators they are. Semper Fi, Jeff, and go Dogs. I actually do agree with that. I think
just because he said that, I think UCLA wins by 7.
I think Washington wins that game. I like UCLA. I have them ranked, but I think Washington's a better team. I think UCLA will get to a decent bowl, 8-4, 9-3, something like that. But this is not one of those wins.
But does the game count since nobody's in the stands to watch it?
No, it's kind of like the tree falling in the forest type of thing, If nobody's there to hear it, it'll actually happen. Well, I guess if the refs are there, I guess it did happen. They're there to witness it, Maybe they got a couple cameras there.
Hey, I'm making a video for Patreon on the Texas-West Virginia game. I'm breaking down the game. I'm going to tell you what, sitting here looking at it on paper and breaking everything down, West Virginia's going to win that game.
Here's the real quick. I want to touch on that real quick. If Quinn Ewers can't go, I think West Virginia wins comfortably, actually. I think we win something like 35-24. But if Quinn Ewers does play and he's 100%, not like 80% or 75%, then I think their offense is going to be able to compete with our offense, and their defense is better. I still think we score 35. I think West Virginia scores 35 no matter what, okay? So that's one thing. West Virginia scores 35. Without Ewers, we beat them 35-24. With Ewers, we lose 38-35.
I can't predict Texas yet, so I'm going to have to abstain until about maybe Thursday or Friday.
Texas is as simple as their starting quarterback. It really is that simple to predict Texas.
But doesn't Texas play Oklahoma next week?
And I've got all the stats. And I'll put that video up on Patreon. So everybody be sure to check that video out.
Yeah. I'm actually putting out a video tomorrow. I made it today, but then this other stuff with the ACC talking about dissolving and all that other stuff. Of course, I made that one real quick. But I already made my West Virginia video. It's not West Virginia versus Texas, but a lot of people don't know that West Virginia has the number one offense in the Big 12. Not necessarily scoring points, but we have the number one quarterback, we have the number one running back, and we have the number one wide receiver as far as passing yards, rushing yards, and receiving yards.
Yeah,
that's a nice crew right there.
I think the one thing West Virginia has going for it, though, is Texas plays Oklahoma next week.
And yes,
the worst they'll be looking at West Virginia before Oklahoma. That is the worst mistake they could make.
That's not good. I agree. You know what? I will say this. I'm glad that Kansas is good in football because I'm seeing Kansas people comment and subscribe, and I think that's amazing. I'm glad to see that we have Kansas football fans. We all know there's Kansas basketball fans, but there's actual Kansas football fans, and K-Do is one of them. Thank you, K-Do, for the $5 donation. Says, where do you think – you know what? Since you're asking that, I'm gonna finish that super chat. Hold on one second, but I want to look up their schedule so I can answer this correctly.
I love Kansas. I want them to be successful, but the Big 12 is tough.
So the question is, where do you think where Kansas' ceiling is, and how many wins does Leopold need to get National Coach of the Year? I think if he gets to 7. I think if Leopold gets to 7, I think he's a strong candidate because Kansas was a 2-win team last year. Kansas is in the big – this is not the ACC. So 7 wins from 2 wins to 7 wins in the ACC, that's a cool little story. But from 2 wins to 7 wins at Kansas in the Big 12 is a big deal. 8 wins is a lock. If he gets the 8 wins – I'm talking to the screen. There's the camera, Golden Blue. There's the camera. If he gets to 8 wins, I think that's a lock. How many do I think they have? Well, they're already halfway there. There's 4 wins. I think
Kansas went from storming the field against an FCS team to starting undefeated 4-0.
I don't think anybody saw that.
Special.
Yeah, I thought Kansas was a bowl team, but 4-0. They could, and I think they will actually, because they get Iowa State at home. That should be a win. TCU at home, that should be a win. They could be going on the road to number 18 Oklahoma, undefeated 6-0, ranked in the top 20 for sure, possibly the top 15, depending on what else. Now, after that, back-to-back road trips to number 18 Oklahoma and number 16 Baylor. Unfortunately, I think Kansas loses both of those. Then a bye week. That's important because the game immediately after that is number 9 Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State's defense has taken a tremendous step backwards this year. I think Kansas can easily put 40 points on Oklahoma State. That's going to be a shootout, and since it's in Lawrence, I would say Kansas wins that game. So that's 7-2 at Texas Tech. That's a loss. 7-3. Texas at home. I'm going to say it back-to-back. Back-to-back. That's a win. 8-3, and then at Kansas State, I'm going to say a loss. There's your 8-4. I like Kansas at 8-4. But it's very, very key.
I tell you what.
I tell
you what winning does. What winning does for a program, and GBD, you remember this, I'm sure. Mark Rogers contacted me before the season started and said, I need a Kansas guy, Joey. Do you know any Kansas guys that, can come on for the West Virginia show to talk about the upcoming game? And I said, yeah. And I started reaching out to Kansas guys, and none of them were willing to come on and talk about Kansas football. None of them. I contacted like 4 different writers and not these were newspaper writers and stuff. Well, now that's all they're doing is talking about Kansas football. That's what winning does. And now they're all willing to come on shows, and and I could text one right now and have them on the show probably tomorrow. It's really what winning does for a program. And I am so excited for Kansas. I mean, I really am. I'm not a Kansas fan by any means, but it's good for college football when teams can compete.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. And I wasn't excited about when Wake Forest had their great season last year as I am for Kansas this year. Facts. And Wake Forest is not a very good football team. Not 9. I would say 7 years out of 10. I think Kansas has been a worse historical football program than Wake Forest. And so for them to have a 4-0 start, and I'm going to say it again, they should be ranked. It's a crying shame that they're not. I understand that Kansas State just beat number 6 Oklahoma on the road, but that's a trend. Kansas State just has Oklahoma's number. They do it almost every year, at least every other year. The week before that, they lose to Tulane at home 17-10. I'm okay with Kansas State being ranked. That's not the argument. But if they're ranked, Kansas needs to be ranked.
Yep.
That's my argument. That's where I have a problem. Heck, if Florida State's ranked, Kansas needs to be ranked. Kansas has better wins than Florida State as of right now.
I'm so happy for Florida State.
I am too, and I think that they deserve to be
I'm happy
ranked.
that they're good.
Yes, and I have Florida State ranked in my top 20 now, so I'm good with Florida State being ranked. But if you have Florida State ranked and if you have Kansas State ranked, Kansas has to be ranked. And I know when you looked at the rankings, they were 1 spot out. Well, that's still 1 spot out. So if they lose to Iowa State, which I don't think they will, then that might have been their opportunity to get ranked. And, it rubs me the wrong way. I don't like it at all. They're using past history against them this year. You judge the team by how good they are this year, not how good they've been the past decade or so. That's absolute nonsense. I can't stand that. Sorry, I get worked up over stuff like that. I mean, seriously, why would you base your rankings on, this team's been so bad for so long, we got to hold that against them.
Good. We don't know where to rank them.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like, man, I wasn't expecting this. Would that make us look stupid if we ranked them because we weren't expecting them to be good?
Yeah.
No, it's almost like they're trying to save their own skin, and they're afraid that it's going to make them look dumb, even though clearly most people think that Kansas should be ranked. I've talked to a lot of people.
I would rank Kansas.
Yeah, I think about it right now. I'm going to hop off here.
All right, buddy.
I'm gonna hop off here, GBD, but let me tell everybody. Hey, go hop over to the Patreon page. Join the Patreon page. You can join for as little as $2 a month. We've got some great benefits for you if you join. Some great perks. Some merchandise to be coming your way. Things like that. We're putting more videos on there. We're doing more shows on there. So come over to the Patreon and sign up. $2 a month is the cheapest one, but you can go up to infinity. We'll create a Patreon page.
You want to be $1,000
right,
Patreon? We'll make it.
Yeah, we'll make it. That's right. Hey, thanks for letting me be on. I'll talk to you guys later.
All right, bud.
Yep. Peace,
Have
man.
a good one. And I'll say this too with the Patreon. We've already awarded $60 in prize money for the first 3 weeks of the score prediction. In fact, one person won it twice, so they actually got $40, and then the other person won $20. So if you're confident in your score prediction skills as well, you can join Patreon for as low as $2 a month, and every week you have a chance to win $20. First you have to pick the correct winner. I pick a game. All my Patreons. If you pick the correct winner and you get the closest to the actual score, boom, $20. And on top of that, if we reach $300 in pledges, we're going to bump the prize up from $20 to $50. Right now, we're at $241. So we are $59 away from bumping the prize from $20 to $50. And that's a guaranteed prize. Somebody wins it every week. Somebody. Could be you. Just saying. All right, guys. I'm gonna wrap
you
this
have to
up.
put me out of here, GBD. I'm on my phone. You have to put me out, GBD. I'm on my phone.
All right, buddy. Have a good night. We're going to wrap this up, guys. But as usual, I like to give everybody their last word. I thought this was a great conversation. What do y'all think?
It's always a great conversation.
But I think this particular one, there's something on both sides. It wasn't a one side, like there's an argument on this side and that side. Like to me, it seems like, if they're actually talking about it, they could have an actual plan. It's doable. But on the other side, it's like, yeah, but you got this law, you got this lawsuit, the anti, all the other stuff. So there's two definite sides, two definite possibilities to this. But as usual, we will go to Tide Guy. Last word of the night.
Well, just to follow up on what you're saying, I do believe everything you're saying is going to come true. I just don't think it's coming as fast as most YouTubers want it to be.
Right.
I think the Pac-12 signs another contract. I think the Big 12 signs another contract. And I think if you notice all these contracts, and I think the ACC opens up their contract, and I think you're going to see all these contracts end around 2029, 2030. And I think somewhere about 2026, maybe 2027 is where you start hearing, we're moving here, we're moving there. So I do think you're right, but I think it's going to take some attorneys to solve some of these problems. As always, great show. Thanks for having me on, and have a great night.
You too, buddy. And y'all go check out Tide Guy. He also has a YouTube channel.
Yep.
All right, bud. See you, Jeff. So somebody in the chat wanted me to name the 3 winners. Well, there's only really 2 winners because somebody won twice. The person that won twice was Daniel Brayson, and the person that won the other time was Charlie Woods. So there's your 3 winners. And I need to look through the scores and announce this past Saturday's winner. I meant to do that today, but today was a little bit hectic. I promise, guys, I will announce the winner of week 4 of the score prediction contest and award the prize. Anyways, T&D, what's the last word for you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm just going to echo Tide Guy's sentiments. I think these things are going to happen, but I think they're going to take their time. I give it about until 2026. I think that's when everything's going to kick off, because that's when the 12-team playoff will be in full swing. But I'm actually curious on how the domino effect's going to take shape once it all goes down for round 2. And that's really all I got. I will say congrats to the winners of the Patreon score prediction stuff, and I'll catch y'all later, GBD.
All right, buddy. Thanks for coming on. Good conversation. All right, guys. Special shout out to you. Thank you for watching and commenting and liking and super chatting. All that stuff helps the channel go. I am the voice and the face of the channel, but you guys are the engine that keeps it going. Without you watching, commenting, and liking, and donating through Super Chat, then I wouldn't be able to do this every day. I'm literally living the dream, and I appreciate you guys supporting. Every day I wake up and I'm like, wow, I can't believe that people like my channel so much that I get to do this for a living. But I do, and it's because of people like you. So shout out to you. On the way out, make sure to hit the like button, even though we won't be live anymore. It still helps the video get views, so I would greatly appreciate that. And as usual, make sure to have the notification bell rung, because I do live shows every weekday and a lot on Saturdays. I just don't know what time, because I have, regular life going on around YouTube as well. So I just try to fit it in. Like last night, I had to go on at like 10:30, and then today I was able to go on at like 8. Tomorrow it might be 6, might be 9. I don't know. Have the notifications. And if you're not a subscriber of Golden Blue Dude, if you're a college football fan, then at least give us a try. You can always subscribe and then unsubscribe if you don't like us. So at least give us a try. This is all we do every day. College football. There is no off season. Even when the regular season stops, we don't. And it's videos every day. And as usual, guys, we will be back live tomorrow, just like every day. But the only thing is, I don't know what time. So make sure I have the notifications run. Y'all have a good night.